There are few game premises more appealing than slaying a series of giant monsters by climbing them like moving mountains to deal a death blow from above. And yet, there are also few more disappointing experiences than having that premise come up so woefully short as it has in Praey for the Gods. This giant slaying adventure tries to capture the magic of the PlayStation classic Shadow of the Colossus, but misses the mark with sloppy controls, cheesy deaths, and bugs that manage to squander some otherwise solid boss encounters. The inspiration taken from Shadow of the Colossus isn't hard to spot. In Praey for the Gods, you'll travel through a desolate open world, scale giant monsters, and probably be pretty confused by the story. Where the comparison stops is in its incredibly messy mechanics and questionable design choices. Most egregious among them is how unresponsive and clunky everything feels, from climbing to combat. It feels like it takes about a second for your character to react to anything you do, which got me killed a lot in the beginning. As you can imagine, lag in a combat-focused game where you can get killed in one hit is a recipe for plenty of rage. And even if I did acclimate to it at times, it never stopped being frustrating. It certainly doesn't help that I was constantly shocked by the things that got me killed during boss fights. Basically, any time one of the giants attacks, they create a shockwave in the immediate area that deals tons of damage, knocks you to the ground for what feels like forever, and is just downright cheap. There were times where I was clearly several feet away from an incoming attack, and my character would just flop on the ground like I was a FIFA player trying to get a foul called on the Colossus attacking me. Combined with the sluggish controls, there were many times where my death felt completely unfair and had me looking to the non-existent referee for a slow-motion replay of that flagrant malarkey.
The referee has deemed that to be a bookable offense.
Climbing giant beasts is supposed to be Praey for the Gods' headliner, but because you move so incredibly slowly and the controls for climbing are so inconsistent, it oftentimes is more irritating than fun. You'll get caught on random surfaces as you go and have to frantically jiggle the thumbstick until you break free. Or start climbing in the wrong direction for no discernible reason and struggle to regain control. Sometimes you'll even just fall off of whatever you were climbing when you've still got stamina left and plummet to your death in a fit of pure rage. Considering just how much time you spend climbing in Praey for the Gods, these annoyances end up haunting you almost every single step of the way through a mercifully short 5-hour playthrough. As if that weren't enough, Praey for the Gods also tests the limits of patience with technical wonkiness. Most of it is minor, like frame rate instability on PS5, or that time this happened, or that time I got stuck in the world like this. But I also experienced 3 hard crashes while playing, including one that lost me quite a bit of progress. Combat out in the open world has many of the same complaints as climbing, including the laggy feeling to the controls and your character having a hard time staying on her feet, but has the added annoyance in the form of weapons so breakable that they feel like they're made out of fine china. I'm not one of those people who claims Breath of the Wild is a bad game because of weapon durability, but dear lord, here your weapons get smashed into pieces after so few uses that most of the time I just ran past enemies for fear of having to spend time gathering resources to craft new ones. Which brings us to Praey of the Gods' survival mechanics, which are an addition to the Shadow of the Colossus formula that I really could have done without. When you aren't hunting big furry deities, you'll be out in the open world gathering resources, crafting weapons and armor, and finding places to sleep, cook food, or warm yourself by the fire. I enjoy a good survival game every now and again, but the level of biological and equipment management required in between boss fights is an aggravation that only makes it harder to enjoy the high points. You have to monitor and maintain no fewer than 3 separate meters just for your body. Depending on your chosen difficulty, these might not ever actively hurt you, but if you go a while without sleeping, your stamina comes back slower, meaning you spend more time standing around during boss fights and hoofing it around the overworld. An indignation I don't think I needed on top of everything I already found bothersome. Assuming you do as I did and spend the least amount of time in the open world possible, and assuming that you can acclimate with the less than ideal controls, The good news is the bosses themselves are definitely the best part of Praey for the Gods. You'll fight winged dragons, big old troll thingies, and even a giant worm. Most of the fights are at the very least great premises, even if the sloppy gameplay rains on the parade. There's a particularly cool boss near the end that has you shooting off the giant's armor from afar before mounting the beast and jumping between parts of his body as you dodge lightning bolts. There's very clearly the makings of a really enjoyable game, hidden somewhere underneath all the poorly executed ideas. And I wish I hadn't had to push past all of the problems to enjoy some memorable moments to be had with the boss fights. Praey for the Gods falls far short of the classic monster climbing game it so clearly draws inspiration from. The sluggish climbing and combat controls make even the standout boss fights so consistently frustrating that it's hard to enjoy the highlights. Combine that with technical issues and irritating survival mechanics, and you get an adventure that's often more trouble than it's worth. For more, check out some boss battle gameplay on PS5, or watch some dragons in action in my review of Century: Age of Ashes. And for everything else, stick with IGN.